Hey everyone, it's Aisha and welcome back to my channel. For those who have been following me, you know that I was in the process of refinancing my home, and I actually made a whole video as to why this benefited me even though I only bought my home last year. It made a lot of sense financially. I was going to recoup my closing costs pretty quickly and I was going to save a lot of money in the long term when I refinanced my mortgage. However, I pride myself on being transparent and I would feel really guilty if I didn't tell you guys all the ups and downs that I've had to go through in that process since we last talked about it. It has honestly been so stressful, so hectic, such a nightmare process, and I want to tell you guys because I feel like not enough people talk about the things that go wrong. I feel like for the most part, when people are sharing information, they are only sharing the successes and don't really talk about the backstory or how many failures it took to get that one success. While people have every right to do that, you don't have to share the information that you don't feel like sharing, I do think it's super helpful to put out that information because it lets people know who are watching that they're not alone if they are going through some trials. Life is a series of ups and downs, so if you're only sharing the successes, it can be super discouraging for people who are following you. And I never really want to be that person. I feel like some of the best lessons come from failure, so I do want to share some of that information with you guys. And if you are experiencing any obstacles, I want to let you know that it's okay and it happens to all of us, and sometimes you just have to keep pushing. It wasn't just one thing that went wrong in my mortgage process, it was a series of things that just felt like it was piling up. So today I'm going to share that story with you guys. I'm going to walk you through every step of the way as to what went wrong so you can see how tiresome this process was. Mind you, this story is quite long, so this is part 1, and next video will detail part 2 of all this craziness. And as always, if you find this information helpful, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. So with that being said, let's jump right into my nightmare mortgage refinancing process. So a little bit of backstory. My mortgage lender had reached out to me a couple months ago, like the beginning of March, to let me know that there were lower interest rates than the one that I had financed with them the previous year. As an act of good customer service, they wanted to reach out to me to let me know that these lower interest rates were available and that if I refinanced through them, they would cover a lot of closing costs. They did this to keep me as a customer because if I refinance with them, even though I'm paying them less interest, they don't lose me to another mortgage lender that may reach out to me about these lower interest rates. I ran the numbers to make sure that this would be a good financial move for myself. So when you're done with this video, feel free to check that out and I have it linked in the description below. Once it checked out, I was like, sure, let's proceed with the process. A couple weeks later is when everything with coronavirus and quarantining and social distancing began to blow up. However, I felt lucky because I had gotten into the process, a couple weeks before. My loan was already in the process of being finalized and I was set to close mid-April. I did have to bring some money to the table because I had to cover the escrow from the previous year. With property taxes rising, my escrow that they had set aside wasn't covered, so I can make a whole video talking about that because I don't want to get too off track. Essentially, there was money that I needed to pay in order to continue with my new loan. So that was part of the money that I had to bring to closing costs. But again, those costs really weren't that high. It was about a mortgage payment for me. So 2 days before my closing, just 2 days before my closing, is when all hell broke loose. I was called by someone at the mortgage company to tell me that my closing was canceled because there was paperwork that I had failed to sign. The interesting thing is they said they sent it on a specific day, and I checked my email, my trash, my spam, everything, and there was no email. I'm not the one to delete emails, especially from my mortgage lender, so that's why I checked spam. Nothing had come through in spam. And then in the off chance that I had actually deleted it, I checked my trash, and that email was not there. Anyways, instead of calling me to let me know that there was paperwork unsigned a few days before my closing, they just decided to wait until 2 days before my closing to tell me that they had just canceled my closing. So that was the frustrating part. So I asked if there was paperwork that I could still sign. She told me to check previous emails from a month before that I'm pretty sure I had signed, but I guess I had it. And I went to click on it and they said the link had expired. I told that to the agent who had called me and she said that someone would actually have to reach out to me to resend me that paperwork. I asked how long that would take and she said, oh, I'd probably hear back in the next day or so. The next day I had not heard back, so I tried following up, and the customer service agents I reached are people who actually don't know the status of my loan, which is crazy silly, and weren't able to send me the paperwork that I needed to sign to reschedule my closing. So they said they made a note on my account and someone would reach out to me in another day or so. So here again, I had to wait. I received a call the next day, but in talking to her, I found out that they said they had to restart the whole loan process again and couldn't just reschedule my closing. Also, I did mention this before, but in the month that you're closing, a lot of mortgage lenders don't want you to make that payment of that beginning of that month because it would kind of mess up the final number, so they ask you to hold off on making that payment. So since I was supposed to close in April, I had been previously instructed that I shouldn't make that April payment. Now, when I was talking to this new loan coordinator, she said we had to redo all the paperwork and basically start the process over. And since that was happening, it was likely that my closing wouldn't be until May. Since this was the case, she told me that I had to make the April payment and then also make sure that I still had enough money to close the next month. While I was going to have the money, it was still frustrating because I now had to use the money that I had set aside for closing to make that April payment and then also just make sure that I had enough money to close in the next month. In the end, I was pretty sure I'd be fine because I do keep some money in emergency savings for, these offhand cases like this. She was apologetic for the process and how the miscommunication had happened, so she informed me that she would email me paperwork that they usually don't email and have me sign it and send it back and then make that April payment, and then we could get the process rolling again. So by Tuesday, I hadn't heard back from her, even though I submitted the paperwork and submitted the payment. I reached out to her and she said she hadn't seen the payment processed on her side, so I just had to wait another day. So I wait another day and I hear back and she said she was pushing all the information along to help me move on to the next stage of the loan. So mind you, I still have a full-time job while I am building up these rental properties and some side businesses to be able to support myself and to have financial freedom. So I'm still working a regular work week. In fact, our work has been even busier, so I am working more than a normal work week while also trying to coordinate with these people constantly every day. So they told me it was policy or regulation that they can't directly communicate with me via email, so I have to wait for a phone call, or if I want to contact them, I have to call them. The only issue with that is now we're at the end of April and we are in a full-fledged pandemic. People are losing their jobs and missing mortgage payments, or that they have seen the low interest rates and they're in the process of refinancing as well. So when I call in, the hold times on the phone are atrociously long. Like when I would call in, I'd put my phone number on that, phone number waiting list so I didn't have to sit on the phone. I made the mistake of sitting on the phone once and it took 45 minutes to get to somebody. So from then on, I just started putting my number on that waiting list phone call, where they call you back in the order that your call was received. One of these times, it literally, I kid you not, took 4 hours to hear back from somebody. Like if I had sat on the phone for 4 hours, I wouldn't have sat on the phone for 4 hours. Like I would have hung up somewhere in that process. So mind you, we are now officially a whole year out from when I originally signed my first mortgage, which means that my home insurance premium is in the middle of renewing. So now I'm passed off to a new loan coordinator who I'm allowed to directly contact via email or phone, and I have his information so I don't have to sit in those long holds on the phone anymore. So now that I'm talking to him, that's the first thing he says. He can't move forward until he figures out why my home insurance premium has not fully processed and wait until that's done. But here's the catch. With that overture from the escrow that I mentioned earlier, as well as the new home insurance premium that has gone up slightly, and I had a claim last year, which I'm sure also played a part, my new closing costs were almost double of what they originally were supposed to be. Like I said earlier, I didn't have a lot that I would have to bring to the table in the first place, but almost doubling that was just absolutely crazy. So I asked him for an explanation as to why this amount was now so high, because my escrow really hasn't changed. It should have also been taken into an account for the last closing that I was supposed to go through with. And then my home insurance premium shouldn't have increased so much that I would have to bring, almost another $1,000 to the table. He couldn't really explain it to me, but he also kept saying that the amount wasn't finalized because my loan hadn't been fully approved yet. So I just had to wait and see what those final numbers actually shook out to be. I would still have the money to make the new closing, but like I said, it was a lot more than I anticipated, and I was hoping to use that money for other things. I keep my checking account pretty low because for 2020, I said I was going to pay down a significant amount of student loan debt, pay off my card note, and a number of other things. So usually with the money that I have left over per month, I put a little bit in savings and use the rest to pay down debt. But here's where this came to bite me in the butt. The new loan coordinator said now that that amount was higher than my monthly mortgage payment, I would actually have to provide banking statements to show that I have that amount as a balance at the end of each month. And this had to be the case for the past 2 months. But like I said, I keep my checking statements rather low because I put that money towards debt. I was shocked and I was frustrated because this wasn't what I was told for my original closing. The only condition that has changed is that my closing costs had went up, and that was because of a mistake that the mortgage company had made in the first place. I explained the situation to him, but he explained to me that it was an FHA requirement, which is the home loan that I used for my mortgage and that I was also refinancing through. So technically it wasn't in the hands of the mortgage company, it was in the hands of the government agency. So with that, he said it was a very slim chance that I would be able to get approved and move forward without these banking statements. So at this point, you can imagine after over a month of this process, back and forth, hour, 2 hour long phone holds that I've had to sit on to get in contact with these people for an issue that I still don't understand why that paperwork never came to me in the first place and why I never really received an apology for it. So now I'm in this situation where I'm just experiencing all these emotions and I'm so frustrated. But I don't want to make this video extremely long, so I will leave it here for now, but make sure you tune in for part 2 to see how the situation panned out. As I said, I tried to be as transparent as possible and show you guys all the ups and downs. So if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe. If you've been through a similar frustrating process with a mortgage company or another lender, please let us know in the comments below to let me and others know that we're not alone in this process. Thanks for tuning in to my story of my nightmare mortgage process, part 1, and be sure to tune into part 2.